Hello and welcome to Chess Goblin. Here we cover chess gambits, openings, and all things chess. In this video, I will be showing you the brilliant sacrifice that you can play against the Damiano's defense. It starts off with e4, e5, then knight f3. And black has the idea of defending this pawn, and there's multiple ways you can do it. You can defend it with this pawn, you can defend it with the knight, the bishop, the queen, the f pawn, and they decide to play the worst move of all of those. Defend it with this pawn right here, initiating the Damiano's defense. This is a very old opening and is not taught very much anymore. The main reason people play this is they play like this opening often, thinking that they can defend the center pawn with their queen's pawn, which works. The Philidor defense is a good defense. Or they play like queen's pawn opening and they defend their pawn with this opening, which is still a good opening. And some reason, a lot of players think they can do it right here with the Damiano defense. But on move 3, you can show them the brilliant move, knight takes e5, sacrificing the knight. And now, in this opening, most people, 9 out of 10 people, will take your knight with this pawn. For that was the reason they put this pawn here in the first place, to guard the pawn in the center. So most people, after they take your knight, it is actually a big mistake, because after you check them with your queen, you're also attacking this pawn. And there's two options black can do in this spot. They can either move their king forward or they can block with this pawn. And most of the time, in this position, black will still think they're doing really good. They're up a knight, and they don't want to lose their ability to castle, so they will block with this pawn. And after they do that, you take this pawn in the center, forking their king and their rook. And they can block this check multiple different ways with the knight, the bishop, the queen. They can move their king, but whatever they do, they're still losing the rook in the corner. So black decides to move their queen, which is the best move right here, and they lose the rook. But black still thinks they've got some good initiative, and they try to attack our king. And not only are they attacking our king, but they're attacking this pawn and this pawn here. And there's two ways we can stop this attack. We either move our bishop up or we move our king over. And the move that keeps all our pawns protected is move our king over. And that's the best move that you should do in this position. Even though we lose the ability to castle, we're still up a rook with some good aggressive ideas in this position. So they'd have to move their knight over to keep it protected, then take the pawn, and very solid position as white. You're up a whole rook, and you should win this game. The other option that black can do instead of moving this pawn, if they've maybe seen it before in the past, or they know they've messed up, and they see the threat after they take and they lose their rook, they might play king e7. And in this position, you still take the pawn, and now they're forced to move their king over, and then you attack with the bishop. And black has two options right here. They can either run their king or block it with this pawn here. We'll first take a look at what happens if they run their king. And after they run their king here, you move your queen over, making a box so the king is trapped. He has to move here. And after they move here, you move this d pawn. You can either move it to d3 or d4. It doesn't really matter. And in this position, black can obviously block with the queen, but this just hangs mate in 1. Or they can try to block it with this pawn. And here you do h4, undermining this pawn and pinning it to the king. And black is completely lost in this position. They can try something like moving their knight. That just hangs mate in 1. They can try to move their king down. But after check here, they have to move it up. And there's checkmate, since these squares right here are blocked by the queen, and it's double check with the pawn and the rook, and they can't capture the pawn because it's defended by the bishop. So no matter what they do over here, it's going to be checkmate. They're completely lost. So let's take a look at the other move. After they move their king here and you develop your bishop, the best idea is to try to move this pawn up. And this is not to like slow down the bishop to check the king or to sacrifice your queen on it. The idea of this is, with this bishop opening up the file to guard this square so the queen cannot move there. That's the idea of this move. But you still want to take this pawn, and after the king is forced to move here, instead of moving your queen here like you would in the other scenario, you just go straight to h4. And the idea of this is to push this pawn forward, cramming their king in the corner. And in this position, there's a couple things black can do. They can move like their knight over, which is terrible. They just hang mate in one. They can develop like other knights, which is still terrible because their king is just so vulnerable in this position. You can just push this over, and now their king is completely cramped over there. Or they can try this sneaky move, which the computer wants them to do, to have a little escape way for their king. And since this bishop is guarding this square, the queen can't move over there. But in this position, you do this great sacrifice. Bishop sacrificing b7. This brilliant move, because not only are you attacking the rook in the corner and attacking their bishop, but the idea of this move is to undermine their bishop from this diagonal. Because if black takes your bishop, they're hanging mate right here. So they can't take the bishop. The rook is trapped in the corner. They can try to bring other pieces forward to try to help their king, but now they're down a rook. And with these strong attacks, you should be well on your way to winning this game. The other thing that black can do in this position, if they know that this is a blunder, they can do another. They sometimes will move like their knight forward, which is another terrible move because after queen check, if they decide to move their king forward, you just chase their king this way and it's going to be mate. After they move here, check, and it's just a king hunt. You hunt him down here and you push these pawns forward, and the king is going to be checkmated in a couple moves. The other idea, which they have to play in this position, is move this pawn forward. And you can sacrifice the knight again, because if they take back with the pawn, they lose their rook in the corner. Completely losing for black. There is a couple variations that you can play with the Damiano defense and be okay. And one option will be like to move this queen here. If they move this queen here, you cannot develop your queen to a check, because after they push this pawn, you cannot sacrifice the knight here like you could before, because they take this pawn and have this great fork where after you move your king, now you're losing as white. So if in the Damiano defense, after you take their pawn, they move their queen, move your knight back. Just retreat your knight, and after they take the pawn, you move your bishop up, and you still have a solid position on black, and you're not losing here. You're doing solid. This is the Damiano defense. It works extremely well in the beginner and intermediate levels. I'm thinking about maybe doing a video on as black and how you should play it properly if you want to succeed with playing the Damiano's defense. Comment that down below if you're interested in seeing that video. And if you have any other openings or traps you'd like to learn, comment those down below as well. And as always, subscribe if you have not already done before, and like this video. It really helps. I hope to see you in the next one.